putting things on a page, even if you're not going to publish them, is just good self-care. Mm-hmm. So again, I've talked a lot about mental health this past year, and when the things are rattling around in your head, that is where they are the most dangerous. But just the simple act of writing them out, even if you intend to destroy them, is very, very helpful.
Hey everyone, it's Corey, and I'm here today with Justin Jackson, the internet stuntman. Hey Justin.
Hey, how's it going, Corey? Good to finally meet you in person.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know. I'm trying to think. I remember when you started Product People, and that was probably like what, 8 years ago?
Yeah. I started in 2008. So no, is it 10 years ago? No, wait. Jeez. I started blogging in 2008. Okay. Started Product People in 2012. So it was 6 years ago. Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. So I remember those days and JFDI, so I feel like you're kind of like one of the first indie maker communities, right? Like that was kind of like the beginning of that whole movement.
Yeah. We've been doing, it's called MegaMaker Club now, but that in some iteration or another, it's been going since 2013. Mm-hmm. And we've grown it really slowly. But yeah, one of the first online communities for indie makers. And we're still, and there was around that time, a bunch of other folks started kind of private communities for indie makers. Mm-hmm. And I think from that vintage, we're the only ones still going. So awesome. That either makes me really smart or really dumb.
No, there's still people in there. It's still going. So
yeah, it's actually growing more now than it ever has. So yeah, I think it's one of those things that, like a lot of things, sometimes ideas just take time to fully mature. So
mm-hmm. Yeah, so we can talk about bootstrapping a little bit too, because I know you've been writing about that. So I know you do a lot of things. Like you're a public speaker. I know you work for some SaaS companies. You did product management.
Yeah.
And you've got a new product. Maybe you can talk about that real quick too. I know you're working on something.
Yeah. So starting basically at the beginning of 2018, started building a podcast hosting platform called Transistor.fm with my friend John Buda. And so we're about 10, 11 months in now, and on the long, slow SaaS ramp of death, as they say. And yeah, I think we've been pretty transparent about our numbers so far. We're just shy of 200 customers and just over $3,000 MRR.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just trucking along. Yeah. And yeah, we hope a lot of my writing lately has just been coming from this really raw, real place that this is hard, and I'm right in the middle of it, and it's not just theoretical, it's actually here. Mm. And this experience has been quite different than bootstrapping online courses and that membership community we were talking about. And it's also been different than working for bootstrapped software companies. So even though some of those experiences helped me, now that I'm in it, I'm like, wow, eyes wide open. I can see, what this is really about. So it's been interesting, and it's definitely been good fodder for my blog and the writing I've been doing.
Yeah, so I was going to bring it up. So I know, like, most notably, you're a great writer. So I know you do great stuff with video and podcasting and streaming lately. But one thing you've always been really great at is writing. I know this is a web page was like, I remember seeing that back in the day and being like, man, that's so clever. It's just words on a page, but it's like, boom, it's like, it hits you. It's smart.
Yeah.
And I know your newsletter, you like constantly have new angles with, whatever's going on in your life, but it always seems to be kind of relevant to the world, like, the indie maker world also. So like, how did you get started writing? Like, how was that something that you decided you wanted to be doing?
So I think I've always liked writing. Mm-hmm. I I think one of my first businesses was publishing a newspaper for my family when I was like 10 years old or something, and writing all the articles and laying it out and printing it and then distributing it to the members of my family. So I think I've liked writing for a long time. And I've told this story before, but I think it's worth repeating. In high school, I was in an advanced English class and kind of felt like, okay, I like writing. Maybe I want to do some writing, later on in life as a career or something. And my grade 12 English teacher, Dr. Nyberg, who was just this amazing woman who was an incredible teacher, she made us write a 3-point essay every single week. And at the time, I hated it. But that rigor, that practice, that pushing all of me to do that every week, it really made me a better writer. And so after high school, I got into college, and I have my business degree, but kind of in the liberal arts. And so we had tons of writing assignments, essays, and things like that. And looking around the classroom, I was like, everyone else was struggling with writing, but because I'd had all that practice writing an essay every week, it just felt easy to me. And so, I really enjoyed writing all through college. I liked writing, papers. And if there was a paper that was more of my mark, I was like, thumbs up. That's good for me. And then I've had websites all along since the web started in '93. I had an online snowboard magazine.
Nice.
But the current site, justinjackson.ca, which is where I do most of my writing, I started that in 2008. And it really didn't pick up steam until probably around 2012, somewhere around there.
So you're doing 4 years of writing without really any kind of...
Yeah, you can still, if you go to justinjackson.ca, I think /articles, you can see all, scroll to the very beginning, and you can see everything I've ever written. Yeah. And if you look at those first blog posts, I'm writing about the IT Crowd, which is a TV show. I was doing tech reviews.
Yeah.
I was all over the place, talking about urban design. And yeah, it wasn't until I started writing about business and the things I was applying at work as a product manager that I started to find a voice and an audience. And I've kind of been on that same path this whole time.
Why do you think you decided to stick with that? Was some of it it resonating with the world, or was it actually because you were finding value there? What was the reason? It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I remember seeing on Twitter, I don't know who tweeted it the other day, but they were going back through Paul Graham, other, internet's venture capitalist types, or just, people that had blogs back then, kind of like yourself. And it's just weird to see all these old topics, but then they all kind of slowly go somewhere. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, definitely everybody wants to have, when you're writing stuff, you want to have an audience. And so once, this early stuff that I was writing, my friends would read it if I forced them to. I would email them after every time I wrote something. I would email it to, all of my contacts and say, hey, you should read this new thing I just wrote. But until you get outside of your immediate circle, you're not really resonating. And once I started, writing pieces like this is a web page and stuff about product development, stuff about making stuff on the web, that's when it felt like I'm finding a group of people here that are excited about it, that will keep coming back, that will sign up for my newsletter, and that definitely made me want to continue to write for them.
Yeah, that's exciting.
I actually don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
I don't know if if it's, see, my inclination is that it's always audience first. Mm-hmm. And so once I found the audience, geeks who make stuff on the web, the writing became so much clearer, so much easier to, write every week, so much easier to find topics, so much easier to find my voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but when I was writing about too, it's who you are too. That helps.
Yes, but who I am could have been all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting. Unfortunately, we can't A/B test our lives. We can't split test and go, what would have changed if Justin had started writing about urban design and all of a sudden thousands of urban design readers came around? Mm-hmm. Well, it's very likely that I would have pivoted to that. I would have invested a lot of time and energy in that. And, as long as it was giving me back what I was putting in, I'd probably be focused on that.
Yeah.
And that would have become a bigger part of my personality. Mm-hmm. So it's a tricky question, and it's something I've tried to answer in my writing and when I do a class or when I'm trying to help people figure out, who should you be writing for? Who should you be building products for? Who should you be podcasting to? Mm-hmm. And, like a lot of people, you're probably the same way. You're not just a geek. You're also, maybe you're into fiction writing. Maybe you're into cycling. Maybe you're into rock climbing. Maybe you've been working as a computer engineer, but you also have 20 years of experience in the banking industry. Mm-hmm. Well, that's all stuff you can talk about. So
yep.
I don't know the answer, but it feels like picking an audience, writing specifically for that audience, and then if it resonates and you want to continue, then that's what you should do.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So one thing I'm kind of realizing too is that you look at it kind of as like mental exercise in some sense. Because I notice when you write, you do a pretty good job of like research. Like you always have like, it's not like you're just pulling things out of the air. Because I remember mm-hmm. doing that early on where it was like, you're just trying to write to sound smart maybe or something. And it mm-hmm. kind of comes across as empty. Like you're just pulling for things.
Yeah.
So how do you push yourself to like do that work?
I mean, now it's my livelihood. And so I actually had a time where I wasn't publishing my newsletter every week. And I noticed that everything kind of suffers when I don't write every week.
Huh, interesting.
And so now I've just regained that habit of every Saturday morning, I am going to publish a newsletter. It goes out, while people are drinking their coffee. I want them to be scrolling their phone or on their laptop, and they're like, oh, yeah, here's Justin's newsletter. Let's see what he has to say. Mm-hmm. And restarting that practice helped my business. It's a tide that raises all boats, all ships. I'm not sure if that's the right metaphor.
Yeah.
But it really, really helps me. And it also really helps me clarify my thinking. And so these days, it's still a little bit of a messy, contrived process. I'll get an idea, and sometimes that idea comes the Friday before the newsletter has to go out. Most weeks I try to start, Monday or Tuesday. I at least try to be forming something. And the forming process is usually about talking about it with friends. It's about doing some research. It's about testing things out on Twitter. So just like a stand-up comedian goes to a local club and tests out their material with their notepad and they're, testing jokes out and seeing the response, I'm throwing things out on Twitter and seeing what kind of response I get, what kinds of things pop, what kinds of things don't. Mm-hmm. And once I've got a pretty good sense of that, and I also have just notes and notes and notes of observations from my own life and things I've observed with other people.
Where do you keep those?
all in just Apple Notes. Is that what it's called? Yeah, just Notes. I've tried other systems.
An inkling of an idea or something, you just jot it down,
or use the voice memos app just inside of Apple Notes, just talking it out. And yeah, I'll kind of collect all those things, and then I'll start to write somehow. I've been using Blurt, but sometimes I'm just like writing my now I used to be WordPress. Now my website's on Statamic, but sometimes right in the editor, sometimes on Blurt, sometimes, wherever I can start writing that outline out and actually, creating the piece, I'll do that. And it's usually best if I can get some feedback on it. So either inside MegaMaker Club, we have a feedback channel, and I'll say, hey, what do you folks think about this? Sometimes I'll message people directly. I'll read it over and over again. And the best pieces have gone through some revisions. And then, it goes out no matter what, though. It goes out Saturday morning.
That's great. Yeah, no, it holds you accountable that you have to do it.
Yes.
You have everybody waiting for you to do it. So.
That's right. And I should say, maybe I can still evolve this process, but I noticed that you're going to talk to Paul Jarvis. I'm not sure if you've talked to him yet.
Yeah, we did. We talked last week, actually.
Okay. Him and I are good friends. And Paul is usually 3 to 4, 5, 6 weeks ahead of when he needs to publish.
Yeah,
so he has
found
a
that
queue.
crazy. Yeah.
I have tried that so many times, and the problem is for me, it's all about what is going on this week.
Yeah.
And it's the rawness of that really kind of inspires me to write, and also inspires me to want to publish it. So if I'm feeling something this week, I just want to publish it now because it feels like it's current now. This is what I'm feeling, and potentially this is what the audience is feeling right now. And so the immediacy of that, of striking when the iron's hot, and it doesn't always work, but sometimes when those things converge, when it's like, this is a hot topic right now, or this is something that hasn't been articulated yet, and I'm going to bring this up.
Yeah.
And it's just it seems to have more impact than if I wait.
Yeah, I think I've seen that with your writing style. It's kind of almost more conversational in that way too, though. Like you're communicating. It's a communication mechanism. I guess that's what writing can be. But you generate like an idea, and then people like the bootstrapping topic you were on the last few weeks really resonated like widely. Like everybody started talking about it.
Yes.
After that point.
Yeah, and sometimes it's almost like a wave. Like the wave is coming, and if you can paddle out with your surfboard and catch the wave just as it's cresting, there's really no feeling like that. And sometimes I feel like writing's like that. You feel like you notice all of these things converging, and you're like, whoa, that's the wave. And if I don't catch it now, I'm going to miss it. And sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I think, oh, something's coming up and
you missed it.
This is it. And either I missed it, or it wasn't as big as I thought it would be. That's always a danger. But you definitely notice once, and it's certainly easier for me now to see, like, because I have an audience, things get amplified a bit louder than they would when I was just starting. But even now, I notice when I publish something that kind of had like a little whimper, as opposed to something that hits and really has an impact.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting noticing how. So I remember like Ryan Hoover back in the day was talking about like blog first startups. Like it's a good way to test ideas basically, and to share your understanding with other people. So you're kind of like validating, like, this is kind of what I'm thinking about, everybody, and then everybody can be like, yeah, I kind of agree with that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, it also clarifies your thinking. Like when it's all in your head, that's the most dangerous time for any idea is when it's all in your head. It's so it keeps you up at night. It drives you crazy, and until you articulate it, it's almost like you don't even know what you have. But once you've written it down, writing really forces you to clarify your thinking. And once you've written it down, you can look at it even yourself and go, oh, there's actually nothing here. In my head, it seemed like such an incredible idea, but now that I write it out, even I can see this is nothing. This is no big deal. But sometimes you write it out and you just feel like, whoa, like I've just given birth to something that is something's here, you know? And I feel like there's definitely times where I've been able to articulate something and go, yeah, this is it. And I would say actually most of my mistakes come when I either haven't written the idea out or I haven't been honest in the writing. And so if I'm trying to hold on to my ego or to my pride, if I'm resisting this idea of being vulnerable, it really doesn't come out right. But and I think people can almost sometimes sense when you're protecting yourself a bit. And we notice this when we read things. You can read something and go, this person's hiding. They're trying to make things look like everything's okay. But what I've found anyway is that people really respond to a certain amount of rawness. Doesn't mean you have to be completely transparent, but to openly and honestly say, you know, here's what I'm really thinking and feeling right now. And and you'll notice if you go back through my writing, you'll notice that the Justin Jackson of 2018 was definitely had less ego when it came to this is the right way to bootstrap a SaaS than in previous years. In previous years,
seen that. That's kind of been a trend, I think, in software community. I think in the world right now too, is we just want to be more real. Like we want, you know. So I think that's part of it too. And
I think there's openness now to, like, mental health, for example, was a big topic in 2018, and that's actually a good question. Maybe this is just the right time to be more open and vulnerable. I'm not sure. Who knows? Again, we can't split test reality, but there was definitely this feeling of like once the cat was out of the bag, once all of a sudden this thing had been expressed and was out there in the open, it was almost like we could all just breathe a sigh of relief, like, okay, it's safe to talk about this. And so I saw that trend as well. And there's still a balance here. I don't know what it is, because I've also, I think, overshared at some points and had that not be great. But
you don't want to do the what's the trend everyone's talking about, like, you know, you don't want to be too depressing or down on yourself. Like at a certain point you have to kind of be real with yourself about what's going on in the world and for yourself also. There's like failure porn. That's one thing. That's what it was. That's exactly it. Yeah.
And it was kind of started by James Altucher, who, if you read some of his early stuff, it's like, wow, he's bleeding all over the page. And I actually really appreciated a lot of his stuff, but you can see that there is a limit. Like there's a balance to this.
You can get numb to it, at least as a reader too.
Yeah, you can get numb to it. And also remember, people don't want to just hear negative stuff. Like sometimes they do. And actually anyone who's really familiar with story narratives, and I'll find this article for you for your show notes, but here's an example. So Britney Spears, She's superstar, young superstar, up and up and up. And then she has the fall. And, she's super popular when she's young and gaining popularity. And then it's almost like people wanted to see her humanity. They're like, there's something selfishly that people like about seeing people fall, about seeing people taken down a few notches, about seeing the humanity of, here's a superstar, but she freaks out just like a normal human being. Right. But then they don't want Britney to be down forever. They start cheering for her to have her comeback, right? And then she had her comeback. And who knows where she is now, but that rise and fall and rise is important. And if you are subscribed to someone's newsletter and it's just all down, like this week sucked. Yeah. Okay, this week sucked. Okay, this week sucked. Okay, this week sucked. Okay, it's depressing.
Old. Yeah, it's old.
And unfortunately, that is this is where you can't just always talk about real life. Sometimes you've got to have some redemption. You've got to have like, okay, here's the fall, here's the pain, here's the struggle, but here's some hope, here's some rebuilding, here's a new adventure.
Yeah, I think people love the hero's journey. Like we kind of expect that story. Like, like you need to be tested, and I think part of people like to hear that. Like we need to know what people are actually going through, that it actually is hard. It's not all just like rosy in the world.
Yes. Unfortunately, real life doesn't always just follow that arc. And so this is where you kind of have to balance things out. It's kind of just like a relationship though. Like if you have a friend that you meet every week for coffee or for a beer, and part of the reason for those meetings is, hey man, I'm having a super hard week. I just got to unload right now. Mm-hmm. That's okay. Maybe 1 or 2 or 3 weeks in a row. But eventually, even if you're not feeling great, you might want to, give that friend a break and, talk about something else.
Yeah, you need to change the topic or something. Yeah.
Change the tone. This is one of the benefits of therapy, is that a therapist just has to listen to you no matter what you're going through, whether it's bad or good. But if you're in a relationship with someone, and the reader-author thing is a relationship, you want to mix that up. Here's me being vulnerable. Here's me being real. Here's what's really going on. But also, here's some hope. Here's some things about you. Here's how we can help you get to this next place.
That's great.
And having a mix there is important.
Cool. So I want to try to connect the dots to something we kind of started on a little bit too. So for other people that are aspiring writers, like you were saying, you started out and you were just writing kind of whatever's in your head. And I know sometimes what's tough when you start writing is like no one really listens necessarily cares. So this is almost more marketing in some sense. But is there a reason that people should continue? You need to practice, you need to get better, you need to find your voice, you need to find something that resonates with people. But what's your advice there?
In terms of like how to find your voice?
Yeah, find your voice. Like, is writing for everybody? Is that something you think everybody should be doing?
That's hard because, again, clearly, if you look into my past, I've always been into writing. And so, like, it's kind of like saying, is math for everyone? Okay. I don't know. I really hated math. So there's definitely some folks that will be more into math and some folks that will be more into writing. Mm-hmm. I do think just like everyone should grasp the fundamentals of math because it'll be good for your life, I think everyone should grasp the fundamentals of writing because it'll be good for your life. Putting things on a page, even if you're not going to publish them, is just good self-care. Mm-hmm. So again, I've talked a lot about mental health this past year, and when the things are rattling around in your head, that is where they are the most dangerous. But just the simple act of writing them out, even if you intend to destroy them, is very, very helpful.
Yeah. I find the same thing. Yeah. So in fact, actually so I'm working on a new feature for Blurt I'm calling goals, but one of them is just journaling. So I'm trying to help people that do want to write, like stick to it, at least for a little while. So it's like, what do you want to write? You want to write blog posts? Do you want to just journal? Do you want to, but I personally feel the same way, that like, I write a lot of stuff that I never share, but similarly, just getting it down kind of helps me to like, okay, that's out of my head. It's just out. Like
Yeah, exactly. And I actually created this thing called writeanddestroy.com.
Oh, nice.
Which is, the whole idea is that you just write any of the awful stuff in your head that you're feeling emotionally, and at the end you click shred, and then it shreds it, and it's gone. So I think that's one part, is that just writing is good for the brain. I think in terms of finding your voice, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it all depends on the audience, because once you know who you're speaking to, everything becomes a lot clearer. What kinds of things should I write about? What kind of tone should I convey? Should I use long sentences or short sentences? Like if you look at my writing, it's very short sentences. Da 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 da. It has its own rhythm, and when you can get a sense of who these people are that you're talking to, and what kinds of things they want, where they're trying to get to, what they value, what stage of life they're in, then you're writing. That's what forms the writing. So this is a web page, which is by far the most popular thing I've written. Is not an incredible piece of writing, but it taps into this nerve that a lot of geeks felt, which was, if you came of age when the internet became a thing, you remember how simple it was and how magical that was to edit an HTML file in a text editor and put it on GeoCities and then have the whole world see it. Yeah. And it seemed simpler back then. And then I connect it to this kind of modern anxiety, which is, man, to build a web page now, there's 100 dependencies, and you need all of these frameworks, and you need this and this and this and this. Can't we just do away with all that? and so I'm connecting these things that are both kind of strongly felt things, and that resonated because of the audience. If I posted that same piece in a different community, most of the traffic and the amplification of that came from Hacker News. For a while, I think it was the piece that had been on the homepage the longest in their whole history. But in another community, it doesn't, it might not have resonated as much. So knowing the audience, knowing who you're writing for, matters a lot.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
You can be always kind of testing that out, but I think knowing who it is and then finding your voice within that community is important too. I might have a voice in the geek community, but there are other people with very different voices that still write to that community and have done very well as well.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. Yeah, I think, there is some like personal aspect of writing, but if you're actually looking to use it to grow an audience or to actually, use it in some capacity for marketing, you should think of it like a product itself. Who's this audience? What are their problems? And then kind of think about your writing being done in that way, I guess. Yeah,
not just what their problems are, which is important, but what do they care about? You want to write about what people care about, and. I know we're going long. I'm sorry, Corey.
Sure. That's great.
I talk a lot.
This is great stuff. This is awesome.
But you can learn so much from stand-up comedians. The whole, if you go to a comedy show and you just examine where you laugh, and so much of comedy is just articulating this thing that has never been articulated that way before, exposing this thing that is widely felt but has not yet been brought out into the light. And so you'll notice, like, someone will say, this thing, and they'll just kind of put it out in front of everybody, and that reaction of laughter is like, oh my God, like I thought I was the only one that felt that, or I've totally had that thought before, but I've never known how to express it.
That's good.
And they just put it out there.
Yep.
And that's my favorite writing, both in terms of the writing I do and the writing I read, are these times where it's like surprising.
Yeah.
And I asked Derek Sivers, what's your like number one piece of writing advice for me? And it was just really short. He said, just write what's surprising. If it's not surprising, just don't write about it.
Yeah.
Man, that's a pretty high bar.
Yeah.
Because there's even part of me that wants to say, well, I've been talking about this forever. Why can't I just say that same thing I've been saying forever? But you notice pretty quick that people, when they read it, go, oh, I've already heard that. And you could be like, well, you still don't get it. But It doesn't matter. You have to make it surprising. You have to express it in a way that you haven't expressed before. You have to give it a metaphor, a twist. You have to do something that helps people be surprised by it again. And even so, the topics might still be the same, but if it's not surprising,
that's good.
It doesn't matter.
Awesome advice. Yeah, no, that's great advice. Yeah, because I see that a lot when people start writing. I know I did that when I first started writing. I haven't written anything amazing particularly, but I think that's the trick. You know what I mean? Or the trick, but like you do need to push yourself in some sense to like have that expectation for yourself even.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right, man. This has been an awesome chat. We should do another one maybe down the road here. The power of writing. But I encourage people, like if you're into podcasting, definitely go check out Transistor FM, .fm, right?
Yep.
And go sign up for Justin's newsletter. You can get all these great pieces we've been talking about, all the crazy ideas that he's onto. Definitely. I'm pretty sure everybody knows who you are, but if they don't, definitely go check out Justin. And we'll be talking again soon, man. It's great. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. By the way, I am a big fan of Blurt. My favorite feature is to go into it and start the timer. The timer where you count down, like I'm going to write for 20 minutes, and it counts down. That is brilliant. And I don't get that experience anywhere else. So when I do write in Blurt, it's always with the timer.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm hopeful. I've been really slow. Like I've been trying to figure out how to become this bootstrapper, wrapping my head around that. Figuring out the marketing side, like building products, just one side. But now I'm just like, oh man, there's so much to do. So I feel like now I'm back to kind of building product again, and I have some other avenues. So I'm hopeful to like kind of focus more on helping writing, not becoming this writing platform. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Cool.